Welcome to NTD Breaking News. Our top story tonight, residents in the Gaza Strip continue to collect aid after another reported shooting near an aid distribution site. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee visits an ancient church that was recently attacked. Flash flooding around the nation's capital and extending into Maryland. Details on a rare alert from the National Weather Service. Thousands marched in Manhattan today to call for an end to the 26-year-long brutal persecution against a spiritual group in China. Plus, a world-renowned dance group makes a surprise appearance. Artists from the group tell us why they're there. A sneak peek at an upcoming Vital Signs interview. Dr. Gator Warsh reveals what today's kids really need to thrive and why it starts with the way we parent. And a special honor for the beloved Peanuts comic strip. Britain's Royal Mail is celebrating Snoopy and Charlie Brown with a set of 8 new stamps, complete with some UK flair.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Tiffany Meyer. In the Middle East, U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee visited a church in the West Bank that was allegedly attacked by Israeli settlers. Meanwhile, there are reports of another shooting at an aid site in the Gaza Strip. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
Residents in the Gaza Strip were seen carrying flour from a new aid distribution site on Sunday. Some say they are risking their lives to get the aid, as the Hamas-run health ministry reported another shooting near an aid site.
We have to try. It's my first time here, but there's no choice. I have to come.
Israel said they fired warning shots overnight at suspects who approached them, and that Hamas inflated the casualty numbers. Israel has accused Hamas of not wanting the new aid distribution centers to succeed because aid is given directly to residents and not to Hamas. Video shows Hamas previously controlled some of the aid, and Israel said Hamas used to sell the aid to residents and use the money to support their terrorist activity. Over the weekend, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee visited an ancient church in the West Bank. Israeli settlers are accused of attacking the church in the Palestinian village about 10 days ago.
It is an act of terror, and it's a crime. It should be consequenced, and it should be consequenced harshly, because it is one of the last bastions of our civilization, the places we worship.
Violence between Israeli settlers and Palestinians in the West Bank has ramped up since the October 7th massacre. Meanwhile, in Syria, a ceasefire appears to be holding after deadly sectarian violence between the Druze community and Syrian security forces alongside armed Bedouins. A ceasefire was reached after Israel reported launching over 100 strikes against targets belonging to the Syrian government for what Israel said was to protect the Druze. However, tensions remain between the Bedouins and the Druze, who live in the city of Sweda in southern Syria. A Bedouin tribesman said he was waiting on a deal for the Druze community to hand over their weapons to the Syrian government.
If they don't do this by 1 p.m., it's going to be us against them. We either die altogether or we take Sweda back from them.
However, Syrian forces were deployed near Sweda to block the Bedouins from entering the Druze area. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Flash flooding around the nation's capital has prompted a rare alert from the National Weather Service. The agency has issued its highest level flood alert. The National Weather Service rarely issues flash flood emergency declarations, but water rescues were widespread after dangerous flooding took over parts of Maryland, including Bethesda, Tacoma Park, Chevy Chase, Silver Spring, and Wheaton. 3 to 5 inches of rain fell suddenly, with even more possible. Drainage systems soon got overwhelmed and water headed towards low-lying areas. Northwest Washington, D.C. also experienced flooding. Reports said there was 2 feet water deep. Flash flooding is one of the most deadly weather-related disasters each year. Around half of the people that die in flash floods are in cars that get swept away by moving water. Fox News says that just 12 inches of water can carry a vehicle away. Today marks President Trump's first 6 months in office. He celebrated the milestone in a Truth Social post this morning, writing, quote, "Time flies," and describing the U.S. as totally revived. Zooming in, the administration made a flurry of notable moves this week, from a major spending cut to fentanyl reform to Americans being freed abroad. NTD's Dana Monahan has your White House Week in review.
The U.S. House this week approved President Trump's request to cut about $9 billion from public broadcasting and foreign aid, the first successful presidential rescissions package in decades.
The Republican Party and President Trump and everybody that works on our side has promised fiscal responsibility and fiscal discipline, and we're delivering on those promises again tonight.
The bill will now go to the president's desk to be signed. President Trump also announced over $100 billion worth of private investments in AI and energy in Pennsylvania, including $15 billion to redevelop Pennsylvania's Homer City plant into the largest natural gas-fired power plant in North America.
We really fulfilled that promise to Homer City, but it's to Pennsylvania, basically.
The Homer City Redevelopment Group says the project will immediately bring thousands of jobs to the area. On the opioid front, the president signed a bipartisan bill cracking down on fentanyl, increasing penalties and classifying it as a Schedule I drug. Grieving parents praised the president for his efforts.
President Trump, for 4 years we felt ignored, but you've changed that, and we appreciate that so much.
Thank you, Mr. President, for stopping the border crossings. Full stop, mic drop.
On immigration, the administration announced that 0 illegal immigrants were released at the southern border in June, the second month in a row.
President Trump promised to end the illegal alien invasion, and he has delivered on that promise to the American people in record time.
Meanwhile, 10 Americans detained in Venezuela were freed and returned home. Secretary of State Marco Rubio credited Trump's leadership for securing their release, calling the arrests unjust and without due process. And on crypto, President Trump signed the bipartisan Genius Act into law this week, establishing the first regulatory framework for cryptocurrency and AI investment in the U.S.
It's a very important act, the Genius Act. They named it after me, and I want to thank you. This is a hell of an act.
This bill provides the fast-growing stablecoin market with the regulatory clarity it needs to grow into a trillion-dollar industry.
The Trump administration announced it will push to unseal court documents tied to Jeffrey Epstein's case. President Trump said in a Truth post on Saturday, "I have asked the Justice Department to release all grand jury testimony with respect to Jeffrey Epstein, subject only to court approval." However, he said nothing will be good enough for those calling for the material to be released. Finally, 3 U.S. energy firms announced a joint plan to help rebuild Syria's oil, gas, and power infrastructure. The move follows President Trump's decision last month to lift sanctions. Reporting by Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Russia reportedly launched another major attack on Ukraine using 300 drones. Kyiv keeps pressing for more peace talks. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has more.
First responders rushed to get people to safety in the Ukrainian city of Odessa on Saturday. A Russian attack reportedly killed 1 civilian, injured 6 others, and set a residential building on fire.
All the windows are blown out. Half of my apartment has burnt down. There was a more severe fire on the floors above. The drone had a direct hit on the 8th floor.
The damage in Odessa was part of a larger Russian drone attack on Ukraine. Officials say Russia sent 300 drones and 30 missiles towards Ukraine on Saturday. In the city of Sumy, the attack damaged critical infrastructure and left several thousand families without power. Amid the attacks, Ukraine keeps working to stop the fighting. President Vladimir Zelensky hints at possible ceasefire talks this week.
We proposed the next meeting with the Russian side for next week. Negotiation dynamics must increase. Everything must be done to achieve a ceasefire.
A spokesperson for the Kremlin responded, suggesting that President Vladimir Putin is ready to discuss peace in Ukraine. He noted that achieving Moscow's goals remains a priority.
Russia is prepared to move swiftly. For us, the main thing is to achieve our objectives. They are clear obvious and unchanging, but the process doesn't depend solely on us.
Putin previously said that Russia wants to keep the Ukrainian regions it annexed after invading over 3 years ago. Another condition is that Ukraine not be accepted into NATO nor the European Union. Ukraine and multiple European nations previously said those demands are not reasonable. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Coming up, thousands march for freedom in New York City's Chinatown, shedding light on the Chinese Communist Party's repression within and far beyond its borders. And a sneak peek at an upcoming Vital Signs interview, Dr. Gator Warsh reveals what today's kids really need to thrive and why it starts with the way we parent when we come back only on NTD. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Big changes coming to solar and wind energy projects on federal lands and waters as a new order authorizes Interior Secretary Doug Burgum to personally approve all projects. What does this order mean for the energy industry, for solar panels flooding in from China, and what new energy sources could we see as a result? Joining us now to discuss is Mandy Gunasakara, former Chief of Staff at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Mandy, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you here. Now, first, how big of a deal is this that Burgum has to personally approve all wind and solar projects?
Yeah, it's a really big deal, and it's a really important step to investing in U.S. energy. You have to remember that a lot of the wind and solar, not necessarily the completed parts, but the supply chains, they come from places like China. So a lot of the renewable energy development, or what President Trump rightfully refers to as the Green New Scam, it was to the detriment of this country in the form of lost opportunity for U.S. energy resources and reduced grid reliability for your average consumer, while enriching countries like China and India that have poor employment practices as well as poor environmental standards. So this is a really big deal that Secretary Burgum will get an additional layer of review for some of these large projects, which frankly have gotten a free pass for far too long.
Now, critics are saying this isn't oversight, it's obstruction and will slow down one of the fastest growing sources of electric power. The Interior Department, meanwhile, says this order will level the playing field for coal and natural gas. Break down the implications of this order for the U.S. and how it will impact energy sources here.
Yeah, I think the characterization of leveling the playing field is much more accurate for what this actually does. Wind and solar have gotten a free pass for a long time in terms of permitting review and what is required in terms of developing, especially on federal lands, while coal and natural gas and oil have been subject to additional scrutiny. There shouldn't be the thumb on the scale from the federal government in terms of picking winners and losers. And actually, with Secretary Burgum making this decision, it's going to level that out. You have wind and solar that need to be subject to the same degree of scrutiny that your traditional energy resources are subject to. And that's going to be really important in terms of ensuring we have enough energy not only to meet today's electricity and energy demand, but what's expected, which is significant growth, especially alongside expectations for AI capabilities and the proliferation of cryptocurrency, which we'll continue to see after the president's announcement in the last few days on that front as well.
Now, this law will also phase out credits for wind, solar, and other so-called renewable energy while enhancing federal support for fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas. Expanding on your earlier point, which industries are most likely to get hit, and could this impact the average household?
Well, I actually think it'll impact the average household in a positive way. Over the past 4 years, the average consumer has been dealing with the effects of a focus on wind and solar energy. And at the end of the day, they are fine energy resources for supplemental energy needs, but they were trying to use them for baseload capacity. And baseload is what keeps the grids running all the time in a reliable way and keeps them running in an affordable way. So the uptick in electricity prices, and the lack of reliability, rolling brownouts, blackouts during times when Americans needed it the most, are a direct result of this over-reliance and this federal preference for wind and solar. So doing away with that federal preference is actually going to be good for the consumer. You're going to have more affordable, reliable sources like coal, oil, natural gas in particular, as well as expansion of nuclear and geothermal, some other alternative energy resources. That's going to be good for the taxpayer because they're not going to be as heavily subsidizing those energy sources, and even better for your average consumer. Now, of course, the solar development industry and wind industry, they've been so dependent on this federal preference in the form of tax credits as well as preferential permitting. They're likely going to see an impact to those industries. But as far as the consumer goes and the taxpayer, it is a net benefit.
Now, many industries, including solar, have been flooded by cheap products from China, as you mentioned earlier. How likely will this law deal a blow to these Chinese companies?
I think it'll be a very difficult position for companies that rely on supply chains from China. The president and in his economic approach, he's not only trying to shore up U.S. energy resources, but also to bring back the manufacturing and supply chains of those various component parts. So I really think that this is going to be President Trump's effort to give U.S. industries an opportunity to take back some of those supply chains, especially when it comes to things like critical minerals. We're blessed with critical minerals in this country, but accessing them have been largely off limits by decisions over the past 4 years. So it's going to be a great boon for some of the critical mineral mining elements, the creation of component parts here in this country, and it's going to cut into what places like China have enjoyed for far too long, which is a massive control over these critical supply chains, which is not only great for energy, but also great for national security implications as well.
And Mandy, looking ahead, what new energy sources could we see spring up? You mentioned a little bit earlier, say technologies like nuclear, geothermal, even hydropower. How likely are we to see more of these sources power our future energy needs?
Well, I'm most excited about nuclear energy. There is just a ton of potential in building out the small nuclear reactors. President Trump has specifically talked about this, as well as some of his key folks, including the new Deputy Secretary for Energy at the Department of Energy, that are going to focus on supporting and developing out small modular nuclear reactors, which have such massive potential. They're safe, they're reliable, they're ultimately low cost once they're turned on. And they're good for the environment. You don't have to deal with a lot of the other trade-offs that you do with other energy sources. But also you see things like geothermal and hydro as well. I mean, these really have been put on the back burner in the last 4 years, and they have great potential as well. Again, satisfying what's most important when you're looking at energy grids, which is reliability and affordability. So we're going to see great expansion of these industries because the president supports them and he has the people in place in key cabinet positions who understand the industries and understand how to help them really take off in a positive way.
Lots of changes for sure. Mandy Gunasekara, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
In unprecedented crime, the Chinese Communist Party has been forcibly extracting the organs from prisoners of conscience for profit, usually killing the victims. The biggest targets of this persecution are Falun Gong practitioners who are heavily persecuted by the regime. NTD's Steve Land spoke with Senator Ted Cruz about his bill to sanction this crime.
Senator Ted Cruz, thanks so much for taking a moment.
Good to be with you.
You've introduced the Falun Gong Protection Act to the Senate. This would be the first of its kind bill if passed. What type of message do you think it would send to the Chinese Communist Party if it does pass, and what does the bill actually do?
Well, listen, the Chinese Communist Party engages in murder, it engages in torture, it runs concentration camps, it persecutes dissidents. With the Falun Gong, they're a religious minority who are targeted, they are rounded up, and they're subject to horrific practices, including organ harvesting. They literally capture practitioners of Falun Gong, they remove their organs, and then they provide them either to transplant to other Chinese nationals, or they also find them the organs on the black market to be trafficked overseas. It is a grotesque and utterly inhumane practice. And this law very simply would impose sanctions on anyone engaged in organ harvesting of the Falun Gong. And it's a simple common sense proposition. My legislation passed the House by voice vote. without a single recorded objection. That's a very positive sign. We need to move it through the Senate. It hasn't moved yet, but I'm going to keep pressing it. And we need to speak with one clear voice against the evil that is perpetrated by the Chinese Communist Party.
Senator, to your point, the crime of forced live organ harvesting, it's not done by a rogue person. Yeah. This is state-run by the government. And your state of Texas has been at the forefront of legislation, particularly when it comes to these types of organ harvesting practices.
Listen, I have been for 13 years in the Senate leading the fight to stand up to the atrocities of the Chinese Communist government. And, you know, when I first arrived in the Senate, elected in 2012, I said at the time that China poses the single greatest geopolitical threat to the United States over the next century. And I think we need a comprehensive strategy, very much like Ronald Reagan had during the Cold War to take on the Soviet Union. We need the same sort of comprehensive strategy to take on communist China. Now, I got to tell you, in 2012, 2013, 2014, I was a very lonely voice up here. Virtually every Democrat disagreed with me. And most of the Republicans disagreed with me. They looked at China and they saw nothing but dollar signs as far as the eye could see. I do think a lot of people's eyes are opening up. And just like Ronald Reagan, you go back to the Cold War, there is power in clarity. You know, I was 10 when Reagan became president. I remember he came in and he referred to the Soviet Union as an evil empire. He said Marxism, Leninism will end up on the ash heap of history. He said, when asked, what's your strategy in the Cold War, he said, very simple, we win, they lose. And most notably, he stood before the Brandenburg Gate and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Ronald Reagan and America won the Cold War without firing a shot. We need that same clear resolve, and an important part of it is calling out their horrific atrocities and human rights abuses, and the fact that you have a government of a nation that purports to be a civilized nation, that is a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations, that is involved in every international organization. They ought to bow their heads in shame as long as they're carrying out practices like forced organ harvesting. So there is power in sunlight and truth for exposing their evil practices, and I'm going to keep fighting to do that as I have for 13 years.
Senator, talk to us about the transnational criminal element to the Chinese Communist Party when they expand their reach into the United States to manipulate our institutions, our media. What can be done to stop that?
So the Chinese Communist Party engages in propaganda. It engages in espionage. It has active spy networks in the United States, active spy networks against Chinese Americans, active spy networks against Taiwanese Americans, active spy networks against Americans writ large. You look at one of the very first pieces of legislation I ever passed into law was legislation dealing with Confucius Institutes. So Confucius Institutes are on college campuses in America. They are paid for and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and they are pits of both espionage and propaganda. And I drafted legislation that would cut off funding from the U.S. Department of Defense to a university that allowed a Confucius Institute to be operational on its campus. As a result of my legislation, which got bipartisan support, we have seen dozens of Confucius Institutes shut down. It is very much transnational. You look at something like intellectual property theft. Look, theft and IP theft has been around from the dawn of time. The first guy who invented the wheel, somebody probably stole the idea and made wheels for his buddies. But there's a difference. We have never before seen a nation state with trillions of dollars of resources and an economy behind it use the theft of intellectual property as a state policy. Listen, when it comes to communists, my father's from Cuba. My father was imprisoned and tortured in Cuba. My aunt, my Tia Sonia, was imprisoned and tortured by Fidel Castro's goons. So I have to tell you, when it comes to communists, I hate communists. It is personal. It is visceral. I believe communism is the most evil ideology mankind has ever produced, and the Chinese Communist Party is an evil organization. And I think we need American leadership to stand up and shine a light to stop their espionage, to stop their propaganda, to stop their theft of intellectual property, to stop their murder, their torture. There are over 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps right now in China. And China should not be treated as a member of civilized society as long as they're engaging in vast and horrific oppression of its own people.
Senator Ted Cruz, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And a special report coming soon on NTD. Join us as we uncover how the Chinese regime is extending its reach into American life, putting freedom at risk. Hear powerful first-hand accounts from those who've lived it. Tuesday, July 22nd at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on NTD. Coming up, a sneak peek at an upcoming Vital Signs interview. Dr. Gator Warsh reveals what today's kids really need to thrive and why it starts with the way we parent. When we come back, only on NTD. And a special honor for the beloved Peanuts comic strip. Britain's Royal Mail is celebrating Snoopy and Charlie Brown with a set of 8 new stamps, complete with some ukulele flair. That's coming up. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Today is July 20th. Exactly 26 years ago, the Chinese Communist Party launched a campaign to eliminate a spiritual meditation system called Falun Gong. Since then, members of the discipline have been speaking up for human rights on the global stage by sharing the beauty of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. In New York's Chinatown, Shenyun Performing Arts joined 2,000 people at a parade calling for an end to the persecution. At the parade, Shenyun's artists shared with us about how the Chinese regime is now targeting them right here in America. NTD's Stephania Cox has more.
In the heart of New York's Chinatown, thousands march to mark 26 years since the Chinese Communist Party launched a violent campaign to eradicate Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, a peaceful spiritual discipline based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. What makes this year unique is that artists from Shenyun Performing Arts also took part.
Mission to revive traditional Chinese culture. For me as a Chinese person, I think it's very meaningful. And at the same time, I'm a Falun Gong practitioner. And the persecution that has been going on for almost 26 years. Right, it's 26 years today. I think it is my duty, to let people know about this persecution through my art, and I think this is my meaning of life, and I find it really worthwhile.
At this time of year, Shenyun is usually busy preparing for its upcoming world tour. But recently, the Chinese regime's attacks on the group here in America have been severe. So it's been forced to come out and let the world's people know.
Ever since Shenyun was founded in 2006, the Chinese Communist Party has always tried to stop us from performing, try to cancel our theater contracts, try to pressure government officials and theaters to cancel our shows, try to stop media sponsors. But the last couple of years, and the last year in particular, we've seen an escalation of this. We point directly to leaked documents that we got from China the last couple of years talking about an escalation in an attempt to crush Shenyun and crush Falun Gong more broadly, internationally, and in America in particular.
Shenyun is a performing arts company based in New York. It was founded by Falun Gong practitioners and presents China's human rights abuses on stage. To try and sabotage the group's performances, Beijing has begun a campaign to send bomb threats to U.S. theaters, target the group's buses, launch propaganda campaigns, and weaponize social media and American media outlets against Shenyun.
Last year, Shenyun received more than 100 bomb threats, and I think it's very concerning. This persecution is not just going on in China, it's spreading to the U.S. as well, and that's very scary because it's attacking America and its very core values. It's freedom of speech, of religion, of expression, and I think that's very concerning, so that's why we're here today too.
It's part of a larger campaign known as transnational repression. The Chinese Communist Party's attempts to control and intimidate Falun Gong practitioners and others, even outside of China. The U.S. State Department has condemned the regime's persecution of the peaceful practice. The U.S. House of Representatives has also passed 2 bipartisan bills, the Falun Gong Protection Act and the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act, now awaiting action in the Senate. Since 1999, the CCP has tortured and killed thousands for practicing Falun Gong.
and used state-sanctioned organ harvesting to profit from their bodies.
I hope best for them. I just, Chinese people are beautiful, so, I just hope that they have a good life.
It's an evil regime. We should do everything to act against it. Well, this is the center of freedom in the world, and I'm glad that we agree on that we're anti-CCP.
This is not just about Falun Gong. If Beijing can run this playbook, this strategy to try and silence Falun Gong here, they can use the same strategy to target anyone or any organization in America.
For many Falun Gong practitioners, this parade is more than a tradition. It's a stand for the values they believe can heal the world: truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. And this year, with Shenyang dancers stepping out of the theaters and into the streets, the message is clear. The Chinese Communist Party's repression is more than history. It's here, it's global, and it's time to face it.
From dance stages to city streets, Falun Gong practitioners and the artists who represent their spirit are standing up not just for freedom in China, but for freedom everywhere. Because without truth, compassion, and tolerance, where would the world be?
To learn more about transnational repression and pending U.S. legislation to stop the persecution of Falun Gong, check out our program China in Focus. And for other information, visit the resource website faluninfo.net and shenyun.org. Falun Gong practitioners come from all kinds of professions, among them data scientists, flight attendants, and hotel owners. Many of them joined the parade earlier today to call on the Chinese regime to stop the 26-year-long persecution. NTD's Flora Hua spoke to some of them. Let's hear their stories and the message they want to convey.
Two data scientists shared with me how the meditation discipline brought them peace of mind, as well as their reasons for starting their spiritual journeys.
First, it was free. And then, one of my very trustable senior students actually told me, so I began practicing. It gave me peaceful a mind and body.
Actually, my mom started practicing Falun Gong because she had really bad allergies, and she heard that it could help with some wellness and fitness. I would say that it really helped me when I got to college, because it's really stressful and there's a lot of stuff happening nowadays, and it was just kind of like a bedrock for me to go back to deal with some of the more stressful times. So it was like a nice, really bedrock throughout my life, but I really started appreciating it when I got to college and afterwards.
James Zhang owns 2 hotels in New York. He and his wife have been practicing Falun Gong for nearly 2 decades.
So me and my wife, we both attended Falun Dafa in 2006 in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. When at my work, sometimes the competition is very intense. However, I know the reason, and this gives me peace of mind. This is the best benefit I have for myself.
Before 1999, millions of people from different professions in China were practicing Falun Gong. However, out of fear of the faith group's popularity and fast growth, then Chinese regime leader Jiang Zemin decided to ban the practice, arrest its practitioners nationwide, and suppress the faith group. The persecution has lasted for 26 years and continues today, with many having been tortured to death, including some whose organs were forcibly stolen by state-backed hospitals. The persecution has left grave impacts on numerous families in China.
This group of people like you see today, and we are from all places or cities come to New York. One message we want to deliver is persecution for Falun Gong practitioners are completely wrong. We want this one to be stopped.
But it's not only Chinese citizens being targeted. Beijing's persecution against the faith has also reached to Westerners. Sharon Jarrick from Australia used to be a flight attendant, and because of her faith, the Chinese regime decided to use its influence to jeopardize her career.
I was landing as a flight attendant into a regular work trip in 2008, and it was soon after the Beijing Olympics, and it turned out I'd been monitored back when I was in Sydney. And when I landed on that night, I was taken aside, away from my colleagues, interrogated, and basically abused and verbally, and then sent back on the same aircraft that I just worked. So I was denied entry. And as a result, I lost my job. So the company, Australian company I was working for, actually terminated my employment. And at that point, I realized that this is where things like the CCP's influence can actually spread far greater than just the practitioners in China.
In terms of what people outside of China can do to help,
So really, Americans as well as my fellow Koreans should be very well aware of what's going on in regards to Chinese infiltration and try to be very keen on it.
among the parade goers, pro-democracy activists who escaped the CCP's ruling also voiced support.
Falun Gong is a group that has suffered the most severe persecution. We know this. That's why we have always firmly supported them over the long term. Falun Gong practitioners have continued to tirelessly spread the truth to the world overseas, which is truly admirable, and we deeply respect them. Falun Gong's resistance to persecution has now continued for 26 years. They've been unwavering in their efforts. What they've done has set a precedent for Chinese people, showing what it means to resist the CCP peacefully, rationally, and non-violently, and how to win more support from the international community.
Reporting from New York City, Flora Hua, NTD News.
Building resilient kids starts with resilient parents. In an upcoming episode of Vital Signs, host Brendan Fallon sits down with Dr. Joel Gator-Warsh, founder of Integrative Pediatrics and Medicine. In this preview, he shares how nature, self-care, and conscious parenting are key to raising healthier, more grounded children.
When I think about my childhood, I was all over the neighborhood. I was into other neighborhoods. I was, I'd meet one kid and he'd become my best friend for the day. We'd get into scraps with the kids from the neighboring school. It was kind of dangerous looking back, but I think that fostered some level of resilience in me. But when I go out, in my own neighborhood now, I don't see kids playing that much outside. I don't know whether it's just my perception or whether things have changed and kids just don't seem to get that kind of exposure anymore. How important is that? If it is being lost, is there a way to kind of imitate it or replicate it?
I don't think it's just your perception. I think that's certainly happening. We have, I would say, an epidemic of kids not being in nature and being outside. I think that's a big issue that is something that every generation before the last maybe decade or 2 decades, they were outside all the time. I mean, back in the day, you're out farming or you're out helping or you're out playing. And even when we were kids, just like you said, we were outside a lot more. We were playing. I think the fears about being outside and kids getting taken and predators and all those things was lower. I mean, there certainly were, but I just don't think it was as big a concern. Maybe that's more because of social media, more because we see things. I think that's one big issue. And then you mix in the fact that we have all this technology, so we have a lot more that people can do inside, especially as kids get older. They can be on their screens or on their computer, their movies and TV and video games and all of these things that we had a little bit of it when we were growing up, but certainly not what they have today. And so you have this mixture where we're seeing kids inside more, we're seeing less community support, we're seeing more anxiety around being outside and letting your kids roam and be free, and so that leads to kids that are exercise deprived and sunlight deprived, and we're seeing it. I mean, we have vitamin D deficiency everywhere. Basically, everybody's vitamin D deficient. No one's getting enough exercise, or very few people are. And I think that's a huge concern.
When we spoke last time, we were talking about toxins in food. How do you get a child to eat what's healthy for them? And you talked about modeling. Like one of the best ways is for the parent themselves to be healthy and model that behavior. In terms of resilience, I wonder if parents are kind of affected by that kind of fear, for example, of predators, and in general are struggling with their own resilience. How can they kind of foster that in children?
The first step, I think, is if you are nervous about something, get the facts. Try to figure out what the actual details are so you can have an understanding of that. Things like predators, As far as I know, most of those statistics are down over the years. I mean, we hear about it a lot more, but certainly overall things are safer. I mean, some things are safer, some things are not. But I think that we get a skewed version because we hear the worst case scenario, and obviously it still happens. But I think as far as I've ever seen, most of the numbers on those things are actually far down from what they used to be. So I think that's one good thing, because sometimes we have a skewed perception of the world based on social media, and getting a more realistic perception can be really helpful. And our stress levels are seen by our kids, and they kind of take that in. So I think, yeah, you have to focus on yourself too. One thing that parents are very commonly not so great at is focusing on themselves, right? I mean, it's important to focus on your kids, but also the most important thing you can do for them is to take care of yourself too. And, if you're always stressed, if you're nervous, if you need to support yourself, like, you need to do that. If you need to get therapy, go get therapy. If you aren't eating healthy, I think we got to be eating healthy. We have to model these things. You can't expect your kid who's 8 to go out in nature and go on hikes without you, right? Like, it's not going to happen. You got to do it too. So you have to show them, you reading labels. You have to show them caring about health. You have to show them caring about mental health. Like, these are things that are modeled and that you foster over time, not over one day. But I think as a family, it can be built. And our goal, of course, is not to force them to do these things, is to teach them why they're useful and helpful.
To see that full interview and others on how to optimize health, go to ept.ms/vital signs. Vital Signs offers general health information not intended as medical diagnosis or advice. Please consult your doctor before undertaking a new health regimen.
Amazon is warning customers about a flurry of ways scammers are trying to trick them into revealing personal data. The company sent customers details of what to watch out for. Amazon said in its warning that scammers could include personal information about a customer that could make the customer believe they're communicating with an authentic Amazon source. The company is saying don't fall for it. The scammers usually claim that the customer's Prime subscriptions are about to renew at a higher rate. But if a customer clicks any of the links in the email, they are led to a fake Amazon website hoping to capture their personal data. Then scammers can sell that data or use it to log into a customer's Amazon account or other internet account. The scammers are targeting Amazon's 220 million strong Amazon Prime customer base. Cybersecurity company Malwarebytes is offering tips for Amazon customers, like using your official Amazon account to communicate rather than relying on unsolicited emails. Coming up, a special honor for the beloved Peanuts comic strip. Britain's Royal Mail is celebrating Snoopy and Charlie Brown with a set of 8 new stamps, complete with some UK flair. And there may be much more to the sounds of nature than meets the ear. Researchers are looking into a new frontier, saying that when plants talk, animals listen. Details in just a minute here on NTD News. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Ever hear the phrase, a star is born? Well, what about an entire solar system? For the first time ever, astronomers have spotted the moment that an entire system of planets has begun to form. And one day it could even resemble our solar system. 1,300 light years away, gases, dust, and other celestial building material have started to come together nearby a newborn star. One day, that matter will form planets. It's the first time ever that scientists have pinpointed the exact moment that a planet has started to form around a star other than our sun. The find was made thanks to data from the James Webb Space Telescope and the ALMA Observatory in Chile. Researchers say the milestone could help us better understand how our own system of planets formed around our sun. Britain's Royal Mail is marking the 75th anniversary of the American comic strip Peanuts with a set of 8 new stamps featuring Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and other beloved characters. The designs feature specially adapted Peanuts artwork for some British touches, including Snoopy and Woodstock as guards outside Buckingham Palace. Other designs show Snoopy lying on top of a red post box, Lucy and Linus beside a sand castle, as well as Charlie Brown and Snoopy enjoying tea and cake. The original comic strip, drawn by Charles M. Schulz, first ran on October 2, 1950. It went on to charm millions of people around the world, continuing its run until February 13, 2000, one day after Schulz's death. The Director of External Affairs and Policy at Royal Mail said the stamp collection is a tribute to Schulz's legacy and timeless charm. The stamps will go on sale on July 24th and are available for pre-order starting today. There is evidence that plants and insects interact through sound. Researchers at Tel Aviv University are opening a new frontier in the study of acoustic communication in nature. Take a look.
New research suggests plants and insects are communicating through ultrasonic sound, undetectable to the human ear. That's according to a study published by researchers at Tel Aviv University and opens a new frontier in the study of acoustic communication in nature. The study suggests female moths can detect ultrasonic distress signals emitted by dehydrated tomato plants, as shown by Dr. Ria Seltzer from the university's School of Zoology.
We found that plants under stress produce these ultrasonic clicks. And this is how it sounds like.
Moths usually lay their eggs on tomato plants to provide food for their larvae after they hatch. By using an experiment using 2 healthy tomato plants, evidence suggests moths use the stress signals to decide the best place to lay their eggs.
One is silent and the other produce stress sounds. And surprisingly, now they prefer to lay their eggs around this silent plant, meaning that they understand that this is a healthier plant than this stress-producing plant.
The discovery could have implications for agriculture and pest control. Professor Lilak Hidani says it could open up possibilities for managing crop health and insect behaviour through sound.
Now, we think that this is just the beginning. So many animals may be responding to different plants. Many animals have interactions with plants. We can think of herbivores, on pollinators, on frugivores, the ones that eat the fruits. Sometimes on predators of herbivores. All these animals may gain some information from the sounds of the plants.
It's summertime, which means plenty of beach days and discovering what's underneath the waves. Starting today, millions of people are getting ready to take a bite out of Shark Week. It is the start of Shark Week. The Discovery Channel's ever-popular Shark Week programming run starts Sunday. The string of shows is a cultural phenomenon that is now in its 37th year. Shark Week reeled in more than 25 million viewers last year. This year, the event will debut 20 hours of new shows. That includes a Dancing with Sharks special and one titled Frankenshark. There are also practical shows ahead of your next trip to the beach, like how to survive a shark attack and other scientific programs. For the full lineup, head to sharkweek.com. That's all for today's news. Around-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.